This is Dateline News and Conversation. Well, have I got a different show for you tonight? You know, I've done over 400, I think, and 50 video podcasts now. I've done a lot of videos and films that are all politically oriented. But tonight, we're going to go up close and personal with two people, one of whom you know. He's been on this show many, many times. I consider him a good friend and a colleague, but he's going to be together tonight with his wife. Their story, their journey, I have found to be amazing. And I think after watching this interview with the two of them, those of you who know Dean will have a much greater insight into who he is and who they are as a couple. Dean and Jill Henderson, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Regis.
Well, I'm so excited to be able to have the two of you on the show and not talk about politics. I'm going to start with you first, Jill, because for most people, Dean doesn't really need any introduction if they've watched this show, but they don't really know who he is and who you are. Now, I went to your website today, Jill, in preparation for the show tonight, and I was amazed. You are not just the editor of a Substack website called Show Me Oz. You're an author, like Dean. I think you've written 4 books. I'm going to let you explain it, but you're more than a gardener. And you are a gifted artist. And you have a series you call Forever Pet Portraits.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like you, tell me a little bit about your show, Show Me Oz. What does that mean, Show Me Oz? I think of the Wizard of Oz. Does it have anything to do with that? And what is the focus? What is the focus of your website? Tell me about that.
Yeah, the title of it is definitely a little nod to Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, because when we moved to the Ozarks, it felt like I was living in a fairy tale. Love the countryside, the hills, and it also happens to be an area where my grandfather started his journey out west. And just some spiritual connections to the area, and just loved it so much. So we were in the Ozarks of Missouri, and the slogan for the state of Missouri is, they call themselves the Show Me State. You know, it goes back to the old political thing where they'd say, you don't have to tell me, you have to show me. So it became the Show Me State. And the Ozarks, if you just take off the rest of the words, it's Oz. And I often felt like I was living in Oz. And I started my blog, Show Me Oz, on WordPress. It's not on Substack right now. I started on WordPress, and they haven't canceled me because I'm not as politically charged as Dean is. But I'm still there. I've been there from about the same time that he started his blog on WordPress. And I write about all kinds of things. I write about nature, and I write about the environment. I write about sustainability, gardening, cooking. I write about seed saving, which is a huge passion of mine, medicinal herbs, wild crafting, things like that. We lived on a farm, and these are the things that I've loved my whole life, and kind of that's what I write about. And then you mentioned my pet portrait. I started another little website for my artwork, and it's called Forever Pet Portraits. It's also on WordPress. And it was just a place where I could kind of reach out to people and get commissions for pet portraits. and also just show my artwork. I make jewelry, and then I do other artwork on there. And it's not a complete site. It's just a way to kind of introduce people to my work. So that's where I'm at right there.
Well, I'm going to share your incredible website with people because I just subscribed to it today.
I saw that.
And I'm not into gardening or farming or any of that kind of stuff. I was married to a woman, the second marriage, and she was into gardening, flowers and things. But together we got interested in planting a garden. This was in the state of Maine. And she really became very good at it. And she was somebody who understood plants, flowers, vegetables, and seeds. And we used to go every year to a couple of seed places where they sell seeds. And then we would plant them in the springtime. Now, you called yourself an organic gardener and a seed saver. What? I mean, where did you get the seeds from? Did you buy them somewhere, or how did you get them? I don't understand.
Well, you have to start somewhere, right? So Dean and I have been gardening since we got together, and everywhere we went, we tried to have a little garden. And so the first couple of gardens we had, I was like, oh, seeds are expensive. We were having a lot of money then. And so I said, seeds are kind of expensive. And I really like these seeds. And I started reading about saving seeds, or just heard about it and started doing it, the easy ones like tomatoes and peppers and things. And then I just kind of, because I'm a plant person, I love botany. I consider myself an amateur botanist. And so that just played right into my seed saving passion. And I just started to learn everything I could about it. And I was teaching seed saving. I would go to conferences and other places and give talks on seed saving. I had a little seed saving group. I was trying to start a nonprofit, and I kind of had a lot of other things going on. So that kind of went by the wayside, but it was a great idea. It was just teaching people how to save seed and how to share the seed. And because if you don't save it right, you may not get what you started with. But you can just buy open pollinated or heirloom seeds, and those seeds come true every time. If you try to save from a hybrid seed or a patent protected seed, then you probably won't get what you expect. You can use those for breeding purposes, but you're not going to get what you got the first time, because they tend to break into their little pieces, after they've been hybridized. But so I just got into it, and the more I gave talks and lectures on seed saving, the more people were asking me for literature on it. And so I sat down and basically took part of my lectures and turned it into a little book. It's a 56-page book for beginners to teach them how to save seed and the important aspects of it, of each step of the way. And I sold that on my own in different places for a long time. And then the book publishing company in Tennessee picked it up, and they are now the ones they're my publishers for that book. So yeah, and so that's how I got started saving seed, and I love teaching it to people. And yes, we're organic gardeners, but actually we're beyond organic, if you will. We've never used a lot of inputs in our garden except for things that were natural that we found, like for mulch and things like that, and insect control. We try to do everything really without any chemicals at all, not even neem, because neem, it's a natural insecticide, but it kills all kinds of insects like bees. And so we just came up with other techniques to protect our gardens from insects, the bad ones, and then tried to bring in the good ones by planting certain flowers and other plants that they like, and then they'd be in your garden and eat your bad bugs for you. So.
I find that fascinating. First of all, where can people find your books? They know they can get Dean's books on Amazon.
Yep. Yeah, all my books are also on Amazon. The first book I ever wrote was called The Healing Power of Kitchen Herbs. And Dean was writing his big oil book, and when he finished that, it really inspired me. I've always been a writer. I've always written poetry, and I just like short essays and letters to my sweetheart when we weren't together. So I said, this is my passion. At the time, I was studying wild edible and medicinal plants. I had been doing that for several years. And I thought about writing a book on that. And I said, that might be kind of a big mouthful to bite when I've never written a book before. So I was sitting out in the garden one day, and I looked out and I said, well, all of these herbs in my herb garden are all medicinal. Not only can you cook with them, but they're medicinal as well. So I decided to write a book on that. And that's The Healing Power of Kitchen Herbs. And you can get that on Amazon. And then the next book I wrote was, it started out, it's called The Ozarks, A Journey of Seasons. And it's sort of a little bit of it's sort of not a memoir, but a story about our life living on the land. And I do a lot of nature walks, and I tell people about the nature walks that, and the animals and the insects and the people that were around us in the Ozarks, the beautiful nature that was there. It's a little bit of everything. It's kind of a biography, a self-biography, but it's also a lot about nature and ecology, wild crafting, and other things like that. So that was my second book. And then my third book was the seed saving book. It's called The Seed Saving Guide. It's a seed saving guide for all different ages, for beginners anyway. And like I said, the book publishing company does that one, but it's also, you can go to Amazon and just type in Jill Henderson and you'll see it there. And then Dean and I co-authored one of our books together, and that was the political book. And Dean talked about the political aspects, and I kind of focused more on the health aspect. So we didn't point out in the book who wrote what sections, because we both feel the same way about it, and we helped each other through each section. But I wrote a lot about things like the health aspects, what 5G does in the health aspect, or what living water is, and things like that. So we co-authored that book together, and so those 4 books. And then I haven't written on my blog for a bit. I just posted a new thing. It was the first time in quite a while, because after they deleted Dean's blog for the second time on WordPress, we just took a little bit of time off just to enjoy the Black Hills of South Dakota and each other, and just take a little hiatus. And so now we're back, and he's a little further ahead than me, but that's what we're doing right now.
So, I'm living in Russia. I'm living in the Crimea, and you talked about herbs. Here they say herbs. When they speak in English, they call them herbs.
Yes.
And a very good friend of mine, each year we go into the high hills and mountains here in Crimea, and the women, they're all women, and they gather herbs or herbs. They use it in tea, but all of them know about the healing and medicinal value and power of herbs. I never knew that. I never knew any of this, because this was not something I was ever involved in my life. My life went on a different track, so I didn't know anything about gardening or herbs or medicinal things. I found it interesting, Jill, that you gave presentations and tours and workshops, and some of them have been on the detrimental impacts of bioengineered crops, GMOs.
Yes.
In Russia, it's a really good thing here. They're not permitted to come into Russia. And I have to say that I've been here now almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in March. We buy most everything from local markets, not grocery stores, markets, not chains. And they come from farmers who are basically organic farmers. And they are grass-fed cattle and chickens and pork and whatever, pigs. And so they have a very healthy diet. Well, you can have a very healthy diet here, but still, in other parts of Russia, not here in Crimea, there's McDonald's and all of that fast food junk.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we still have Kentucky Fried Chicken here. Um, they call it Crimean fried chicken now. I love it. I love it. All right. So, Jill, one more thing. Well, actually, a couple more things. Um, you're actually a very gifted artist.
Thank you.
Um, how did that happen? When did you start realizing that you like to draw? What I mean, tell me about that.
Um, I think ever since I can remember, I love to draw. I love, as soon as I could hold a crayon in my hand, my mom and dad were very creative people. We weren't rich. We didn't have a lot of money, and we didn't have cell phones and just those kinds of distractions. And my mom was very crafty, and we would to make like clothes for my baby dolls. She was sewed, and she can't draw, but she was always giving us little crafts, to keep us happy. Keep like we're in a road trip where she's got all the crayons, she's got crafts, she's got fun little things for us to do. So I started doing arts at a very young age, not even knowing it was art. It's just fun. And my dad was an excellent, very skilled illustrator, even though he didn't use it. He was a rocket scientist. And his idea of drawing was probably a lot more technical stuff. But one time I asked him to draw a picture for a report that I was doing on sled dogs, and he just sat down and just drew it right out. And I just sat there with my mouth open, like, wow. And I didn't realize I could do that until one day, I don't know, we were just at a friend's house. And I don't know if you've ever seen these, but here in America or in magazines, you see like, can you draw me? It's a page, and it's like an art school, and they're trying to get you to sign up. I didn't know that. I just see these little pictures of cartoon characters, and they'd say, can you draw me? And so I was sitting with my friend one time. I think I was probably about 12. And I said, yeah, I can. I was just doodled it right out, and I didn't even know I could do that. So I did. And then I just started drawing all kinds of stuff, but with pencils or whatever I had on hand. And just the older I got, the more interested I got in it. I took one art class in high school, and I was kind of shocked that I won the Art One award for my grade. It kind of shocked me. My art teacher wanted me to go to art school, but when she told me that I was going to have to make a portfolio of my work and submit it for their review, I kind of lost my mind, because I'm kind of shy in a lot of ways. And I didn't want people scrutinizing it, because I didn't think it was very good. So I kind of walked on that opportunity. And then just over the years, I just did it for me. I just did it because I loved doing it. I kept pushing myself to do new things. People would give me new tools to work with. Like, I was mostly doing, pen and ink and pencil, because that's what you could find anywhere. I can find a ballpoint pen. I can find a marker. I can find a pencil. And then I was given some charcoal pencils at one point, and I just fell in love with those, because it's black, white, and a million shades of gray. And it's just, what can you do with one instrument, And just slowly, I just keep adding new things. My father passed away a few years ago, and from cancer. And he was a painter. He loved to paint and do it a lot. But I was gifted his paint box, and it had all kinds of acrylics in it. That's what he was doing at the time. And there was a painting in there that he had started and not finished. And I decided I was going to finish it. And so so he had some books that kind of explained it. And I did some practice paintings, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, that's really good. And so then I started painting. But the pet portraits came before that, because a friend of mine's dog died, and her husband's dog passed away. And she said, can you draw a picture of Bailey for me? I would like to give it to my husband. And I said, you know what? I'll give it a try. What the heck? I never have. Well, let's try it. So I did. I had a friend had given me some soft, colorful pastels. They're very silky pastel sticks. And I'd been playing around with them, doing fun stuff with them. And then she asked me to do this pet portrait, and it made him cry when she gave it to him. And I thought, well, if I can make him cry and I can touch somebody's heart like that, it seemed like a really good thing to me. And so I started doing pet portraits, and I've done, I don't know how many I've done. I've done quite a few.
Yeah,
And
I'm going to encourage people to go to your website, and there's a section there, Forever Pet Portraits. I'm going to encourage people to go to see that, because you really are a very accomplished, talented artist.
thank
But you're into all kinds of stuff: crafts, artwork, jewelry. I'm reading here from your website some stuff I don't even know what it is, but stone carving, junk sculptures. I think I can imagine what that is. Photography, digital imaging, oil painting, and much more. What else is there after much more?
Well, I make jewelry. There's just some of my earrings in here, and this I made. I made jewelry. Dean and I, when we first got started in life together, we were street vendors. And we literally vended on the street, and we also went to craft shows and music shows, festivals, and sold our stuff. We imported some of the goods that we picked up as we traveled around the world, and then to sort of fill in the gaps, I started making jewelry. And so I do that. I make jewelry. I do all kinds of drawings, paintings. I've done mosaic tile work. I don't know. I just I got my fingers in everything. If it has something to do with creating something, I'm into it. And if I haven't done it yet, I want to try it. And I had a group of friends back in Missouri that were also artists, and we used to like to get together and teach each other things. So we all didn't do the same kind of art, and that's a really fun way to learn how to do something new. I had a friend that did glass work. I had another friend that did pottery. Another friend that did gourds. So we would just teach each other things. So some things stick with you longer than others. Some things you're more passionate about for your own personal self. But it's always fun to try new things. My passion definitely, though, is drawing, painting, and I love doing the jewelry. But I'll try anything, and I'd love to try everything. I love to do some metalsmithing. I just said I did junk art, and when we first moved to Arkansas, there was all this rusty metal laying around, and we were for a while we were just gathering it up, and then I thought, this looks kind of like I could make a flower out of this. And I made these flowers out of a plow disc and some pallet straps and just like an old rusty pole and they kind of bounced in the wind. And, I don't know, we're just always doing something different, making wind chimes out of little wrenches. I don't know, whatever comes my way. I did cow skulls. I did a long series on painting cow skulls. They're also on my Forever Pet Portraits. I have all my a bunch of my other art, not all of it, but the cow skulls are on there. I've sold most of them already. There's still a few left, and then I get on Jags. So, I did cow skulls for several years. I just couldn't stop myself, and people started seeing my work. So they started bringing me cow skulls, and I did a few turtle shells, painted them, so. And then at some point, like when we moved, they're kind of big and bulky. So I dropped them off at my friend's brewery, and that's where they're being sold right now, is in some friends who started a brewery back in West Plains. And so they're selling them for me. And I've been in art shows and done different things. So whatever comes my way, I love trying new things, experimenting, all the time. It's always going to change.
Let me ask you this. You're on Amazon, but I'm living in Russia, and we can't get anything shipped here in or out. And so I've got Bruce Dean's last book on Kindle. Are you also on Kindle?
I am on Kindle. That also goes through Amazon. At one time, we had another kind of, what was that called? That It was another kind of it was an early publishing platform before Amazon really took off. And we were on there, but that they just couldn't compete, and never could.
I'll have to look. I'll have to look for you on Kindle because I want to buy a couple of your books.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah, you might be able to. You also might be able to go to Barnes and Noble and stuff. I'm not sure I'm there. I think you have to have a certain sales ranking before they really. But if you go to Barnes and Noble, they can get it. Any bookstore that you go to, they can get it for you. And you don't.
Well, we don't have Barnes and Noble here.
Yeah.
I can only get digital stuff, and Kindle's been really good for me. You know what I've been thinking as we're talking? I think maybe you and I should do a couple of shows together.
Okay.
Well, I'm serious. Think about it. I mean, I would find it very, very interesting to get deeper and deeper into everything we've been talking about. Now, I have a personal question to ask you.
Sure.
Okay. When and where did you two meet?
You want to tell him? You tell him. I've been talking too much.
Well, okay, so let's see. I had just I'm from South Dakota, right? My home state is South Dakota. She's from her home state was Louisiana, and I had just come back from a round the world trip solo. Bought one of those one-way tickets that you could do back in the day. You can't get them anymore after 9/11. You can't do it, but it was just called a round the world ticket. So went let's see, Boston to Paris, and then overland to Rome, and then to Bombay, and then Delhi, and then went overland to Nepal, and then I came out the other way and flew from Calcutta to Bangkok, and then went down to Malaysia and back up, and then flew to the Philippines, to Manila, and then to Hawaii. I spent 2 months as a prep cook at the Hard Rock Cafe in Honolulu. Lived in Honolulu for a couple months. And then while I was traveling, I got a full ride scholarship to University of Montana. I had Erasmus scholarship to get my master's degree in environmental studies, which my mom and my sisters helped me type up. I wrote it. You had to write why do you believe in an education that's it's not focused just on one discipline. It's an interdisciplinary education. Why is it important? And that, I guess it was good enough to get me a scholarship. So I went back to South Dakota. I was totally broke at that time. Spent all my money traveling, didn't have much anyway. And so farmer that I'd worked for, driving tractors and baling hay and because I was a farmer, I grew up on a farm. He wanted to hire me back because he liked my work and he liked me. But it was like $4 an hour. He said, I'll give you $4.50. And I said, well, no, I better not. I'll go to Minneapolis. So I went to Minneapolis. I got a really good job with the Pipe Fitters Union, scraping asbestos out of schools. And I saved about 10 grand. That was the goal. And before I went to Missoula, Montana to get my master's. So while I was there, Jill, it was, it was a weird deal. It was like the guy that invited me to this party, Don was his name. And he was kind of a crazy guy, just, guy in passing. Did turn me on to Joe Jackson and XTC and some other good music. But anyway, he said, I'm going to this party. You want to come along? So, okay. And then she met this gal. She was working at Elizabeth Arden Cosmetics, I think, in Minneapolis. She had just gotten a divorce from her first husband. So she went to the party with a gal named Faith, who it turns out actually knew this guy, Don.
Well, we had to take out this makeup artist at the store. I had another gal, her name was Faith, and she had to take her makeup artist out on the town. And so she asked me and another friend to go with her because she didn't want to go alone. And it turned out that we met him at the bar and they kind of hit it off. And then she said, oh, I've been invited to this party, but I can't go because I don't know this guy really. I mean, I just met him. And so would you come with me? And I didn't really want to, but I did. And I walked in the door and we walked out to the back of the house, and there was like a little portico or like a little patio. And he sat down, and that's where that guy she was interested in was, and they started talking, and Dean was sitting there, and we started talking, and then the next thing I knew, everybody else was gone. It was just Dean and I still talking. And I remember thinking, this guy's not like anyone I've ever met in my life. You know, first of all, he just come back from a trip around the world by himself. And I don't know, we just hit it off. And
just interesting, the gal's name was Faith, right?
yeah, and I didn't want to be there.
But so then, you know, I said, well, you know, we dated for the summer, and she kind of wanted to go with me to Missoula, and I said, no, man, you know, you just got divorced, you're kind of on the rebound here, you should probably go back. She had a really good job waiting for her with Arden down in New Orleans area, and that was her plan already before we met. My plan was before we met, and I said, no, just go ahead and go down there, and we'll see if it's meant to be, kind of thing. And so we just kept in touch, and then eventually, you know, we got her a U-Haul and drove her up to Missoula about a year later, and that's how we met.
Yeah.
So
33 years later.
Yeah, 33. You've been married for 33 years.
35.
35
years in April. Yeah. So we've been together about 37, but 35 years in April we'll be married.
Congratulations on that. That's really interesting. All right, so I'm going to switch gears now. I want to talk to Dean a little bit, and Jill, jump in. This is an interview of the two of you, a couple, and you know, he's going to go telling his thing. But if you think he's left something out or he needs to be corrected, don't hesitate.
For sure.
Oh, I
Right.
won't. He's like, she won't. She'll say it.
Okay, so anybody who's been watching my show for the last number of years, and it's had a different title 2 or 3 times, is familiar with Dean. He's really a world-renowned political analyst, a historian, an author, and we've done a number of interviews. So he doesn't really need an introduction in terms of that, but I think we're going to find out a little bit more about the man now that I think a lot of people are going to find not just interesting, but I think there's a really human side to this man that I have only come to know over the last maybe several months. I hadn't known much more than reading his books and interviewing him on my show. Dean, I'm going to post your new Substack website. I guess it's a website. It's substack.com/@Dean Henderson, one word. But I will post that in this video and in the description. So, Dean, I want to know a little bit about your background. I know a little bit about it. You grew up on a farm. Where was that?
It was a little town called Faulkton, South Dakota. And and then my dad was killed in a car wreck when I was 12, hauling a Pole Hereford bull to a buyer. We had what was considered the best Pole Hereford bulls in South Dakota. He was a really good farmer. He didn't use pesticides. We had tractors with no cabs on them, no air conditioning. He was where I was influenced to live simple, along with my grandma, his mother, and his father, who I went around with when I was a kid. And we'd literally go around to the telephone poles that were being replaced, and we'd pull the nails out of them and straighten them out and put them in Prince Albert tobacco cans in the shop, because he smoked a pipe. He smoked Prince Albert. But all along the way, they all just were teaching me to live simple, you know, and don't feed the beast, basically. So and then I learned a lot from the Lakota people, because my dad would go hunting with the Lakota people out on the northern Cheyenne River Reservation, which was about 50 miles from where I lived, just across the Missouri River. And a lot of people in my town are racist and talk down on Indians, but my dad never did. And he was good friends with the Indians, so they would have let him come out on the res, which they wouldn't let hardly any other white people hunt there, but they would let him hunt. And we hunted antelope and grouse out there because we didn't have them. west of the river. My dad was a big hunter, taught me to hunt, taught me to trap, taught me to fish, took me outdoors all the time. We had a Willys Jeep. He would take us for rides in the Willys Jeep and just get pretty crazy. And he'd get home and he'd be like, "Don't tell your mom what we just did," So we never did. But anyway, yeah, he died in a wreck when I was 12, and so that changed everything. So then I went to work for local farmers like right away. Had to quit playing baseball in the summer and stuff like that, make some sacrifices because I had my mom and 3 sisters. So I became, pretty independent pretty early. I just, I was a good athlete. I was a all-state middle linebacker. I was a point guard on the basketball team. I was a catcher on the baseball team. I was a musician. I played trombone in the jazz band, which we won a trip to Europe because we were the best jazz band in South Dakota. Also played the tuba in the orchestra. I played the baritone in the regular band. I went to South Dakota State. I was in the marching band. I was also in the jazz band at South Dakota State University. I was offered a walk-on opportunity at South Dakota State also for football, but I turned it down. By the way, South Dakota State just won the 2nd consecutive national title as the smaller school thing. So they're pretty good, but anyway, I turned it down, and I'm glad I turned it down. I was undersized middle linebacker. I would have had to lift a lot of weights, and I would have never made the pros. So I just turned it down. I said, I'm going to turn my attention to learning and intellectual pursuits. And so the first couple of years of college, I was a partier and a drunk, and I didn't do too good. And the second 2 years, I straightened out. I found out, I had some professors who were kind of Marxist professors, socialist professors, whatever, who just opened my eyes to this whole different world. I met Palestinians at South Dakota State who were studying ag engineering, and I got involved right away in the Palestinian movement against Israel, and I got involved also in the anti-apartheid protests against South Africa. There was just a handful of us at South Dakota State. Then I transferred to the University of South Dakota, which is it's a better school for learning, and did really good there. Got more involved in politics. Went to Nicaragua on a Witness for Peace trip, to witness the Contra atrocities because the U.S. Reagan was funding the Contras and they were just murdering people and running drugs and everything else. Came back, did a fast for a week to protest that war. Me and another kid in Vermilion got arrested in Sioux Falls. Had big protests over the farm crisis, dumped grain in the parking lot of the Sioux Falls Arena because the farmers, this was a farm crisis, where a lot of the middle-sized farmers, the diversified farmers, the guys that grew everything, like my dad, we had everything. We had cattle, sheep, pigs, chickens, pheasants, ducks, geese. We had barley, oats, wheat, corn, everything, alfalfa, everything. And we fed the cows what we grew. We fed the pigs what we grew. We fed ourselves what we grew. We butchered our own animals and all that good stuff. So all those guys during the farm crisis, they got wiped out, and it became either you had a really huge farm with big tractors and GPS, and the bank tells you what to plant, and you go in debt up to your eyeballs, but you drive a big pickup so people think you're rich, but you're really a pauper, and you're serving the man. And then, or you had a really small farm, and I learned that. And so, after I met Jill, I said, I traveled around the world. We met, got my degree at Montana, decided, if you got a master's in environmental studies, your options were basically, go to work for the government and apologize for the corporations and clean up their mess through Superfund sites, or go to work for a corporation directly and be a PR man that apologizes for them, be their environmental quality, and whatever. And it was all just going to be a scam and a sellout. So I picked that up pretty early, and I did an alternative newspaper. We shut down a big paper mill in Missoula. We raised a lot of hell in Missoula. The heat came. They were, harassing us. And at that point, Jill and I went to Japan. We got married at the courthouse in Missoula because Japan, they frown on shacking up. And I didn't want to have a wedding a big wedding because my sister was getting married too. I didn't want to rain on her parade and get in the way of that. So we just went to the courthouse quietly. Nobody knew but us and my friend Daryl, who stood for us, and the judge, I guess. And I guess eloped and went to Jerry Johnson Hot Spring for our honeymoon with a bottle of wine in the middle of winter. And it was great. And then we flew to Japan, where, because we were out of money again, had burned through that 10 grand, going to grad school. And then we made about 15 grand in Japan, and we split halfway down the contract because they were racist, and it's a really crazy place. And not one of my favorite countries, and I've been to 50, but that's probably my least favorite.
Though.
But beautiful, exactly.
It was really beautiful.
And we met some great people too.
And we did.
Who were rebels, but they were also ostracized and treated really
But
badly.
we were in a tiny little community. They were the only foreigners there, and they hadn't really had any Europeans or Western people, white people there since the war, and they got bombed not on accident. They just unloaded the payload on this little town called Honbetsu. Mm-hmm. And the older people there remembered that and resented it, and they didn't like seeing us there. They were not happy to see us. I mean, a lot of people were, but we definitely got a lot of and then there's, just like in America, there's a lot of racism in Japan, or there was, at least at that time. I'm sure things have changed a lot since we were there. But there was still a lot of racism. And being from a southern state myself, I was born in California, so I had a lot of Mexicans there, and there was a lot of racism around that. And then when we moved to Louisiana, of course, there was a lot of racism towards the African-American community. And so when we went to Japan, and I never appreciated that at all. I didn't like it. I had friends that were Black, I had Mexican friends, I had all kinds of friends. Doesn't mean that a lot of other people that were around me really appreciated that. But when we went to Japan, I remember one time I was walking down the street in this little town that we were in, and I saw these ladies get in their car real quick and close the doors. And as I passed the vehicle, they reached out and locked the door, like that as I walked by, and they were kind of looking at me, and I suddenly knew it was, for the first time in my life, I understood what racism really was and how it felt, how much it hurts people. Because I was just walking down the street. It's not like they hadn't seen me around town before, but they were scared I was going to assault them or rob them. So
it has to do with Shintoism, and it has to do with a lot of things, but it's a long story. I won't get into it, but suffice it to say, the Japanese culture is fascist and pretty, they have an inferiority, superiority complex, let's just say. Anyway, so we took a ferry, we ditched it, and we took a ferry to China, to Shanghai. We went and traveled through Thailand again, and Malaysia, and Philippines, and made our way back to the U.S. And we decided we were going to move to the country at that point, and back to the country. So we started in a little shack, Flathead Lake in Montana, Elmo, and we ended up buying a place in Arkansas. It was the first place we bought, about 10 acres and a mobile home, and planted a huge garden. Again, we were broke.
Spent every penny on the
down payment. Yeah. And so I went to work at Beaver Dam, and does kind of a roustabout on this drill crew. And it was down the road, and drove one of those 67 Plymouth Valiant on icy roads, and with 10-mile-an-hour curves. And it was the toughest time probably in our life. We were struggling. And
I probably drove like 80 miles.
And she was
round
driving
trip
the
to
other
work
way.
to Fayetteville.
Yeah.
And
for a while,
working at a radio station.
Working at a radio station. And then we ended up, I said, look, man, you take me over to Muskogee, Oklahoma. I'm going to hitchhike to Guatemala, and I'm going to bring some goods back. And so I brought hammocks from me to Mexico, and I brought a bunch of Guatemalan bags, vests, shorts, pants, whatever. And we put up a little lean-to.
Well, it was more than a lean-to.
Okay, yeah.
We bought a little thing, and it had like a canvas cover on it. It was a little metal building, and then we built shelves and tables in it. And we had a garden right there by the road, huge garden. We were selling produce.
Yeah, and we called it Trail of Tears Trading Post because we were literally on the Trail of Tears, where the Cherokee and the Osage and the Choctaw and the Chickasaw, all those people were marched west into Oklahoma, by the bad guys. And you could feel the energy there. It was a real sad place, very sad place.
That was the first time in the Ozarks, because it's also the Ozarks there.
Yeah, same. It's just the Arkansas side of the Ozarks. So we call it Trail of Tears Trading Post. We put our signs up. We put an approach in, a culvert, and built that building and started selling our goods from Guatemala and Mexico, and also our produce. And we literally go pick people tomatoes and peppers and whatever and bring it out fresh. And when they complained that it was $1 a pound, I'd tell them to go to Walmart and pay more. And
that's when I learned to make jewelry. By one of our friends, I learned
jewelry,
to make
right, from a gal that we befriended there. So that's where you get into the female stuff,
Yeah,
right? So, anyway, and then so we sold that eventually. We had to get out. It was sad, and we had to get out. I had to get out of the country again because I have to do that from time to time because America starts bumming me out, right? So we went to Venezuela. At that time, that was pre-Chavez era. That was back when it was a pretty prosperous country for South American country. But there was all this corruption and a ton of poverty, and came back, and we put our van in storage, and somebody watched the dogs. We had 2 dogs, Buck and Milo. We had those dogs for 12 and 18 years, respectively. But by our life, really, there's been 3 things. The themes are travel, farming, self-sufficient, small farming with low inputs to starve the beast and feed ourselves, and then writing and politics. Those are the 3. So I would go back and forth. So we sell Arkansas for a while. We went to Venezuela. Then we came back. We went to Eugene, Oregon for a while. Check that out. We went back to Montana where I got my degree, and we started and
rolled out in our van a few times.
Rolled out in our van. We lived in a cabin with no running water in Montana for 2 years at Swan Valley. Beautiful spot.
Oh man!
But it had outhouse, no running water.
I got cornered by a bear in the outhouse.
She encountered a black bear in the outhouse one day. But it was great. We went hiking. We hiked. I think we hiked just as much or more than anybody in Montana. I know that state better than anybody. The backcountry. And we really got into backcountry hiking. Our longest trip was 7 days. Overnight, 7 nights into the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness, and there's more grizzlies than anywhere, and we didn't care. And we had our dogs and fished along the way. There was all these pothole lakes. We hauled very little food, and we just fed ourselves with fish. We had some eggs, we had some burger, we had some other stuff, but you can only carry so much in 7 days. Mm-hmm. And we just did a lot of that. So that was just really fun. And then we decided, okay, Montana's getting gentrified, which it was.
And we couldn't afford to buy anything there.
Couldn't afford to buy land. So we said,
we were young.
We were young, and the Californians were moving in. They were ruining everything anyway. Mm-hmm. And so we went to Bemidji, Minnesota for a couple of years. And while we were in Montana, I guess I should mention, we went to Bolivia also. We flew to Bolivia also and did the Andean countries. Came back, brought some more goods. Really started our street vending business in earnest in Missoula because they had a really good law where you could pay like $50 a year and you could be on the street anywhere with a table. So then we started bringing in the hammocks that we had gotten, and also yak wool sweaters from Nepal, which I'd run into when I was in Nepal way back. Got a hold of the guy. They were still in business. And to me, it was the best sweater and it was the best hammock you could buy. And we kept them for ourselves. Jill filled it in with jewelry. Then we traveled to Bolivia. We got beads in Ecuador, beads in Peru. Bring those back, add that to the mix, and like that. And then, but eventually we moved to Bemidji, bought a house there in town, and bought a couple different houses in Bemidji over time. And then the dogs were getting old, at that point, and they had this tiny little backyard. So we were like, we got to go where the dogs can die in peace. And lo and behold, we went to Peace Valley, Missouri. And that's where they did both die, and they had a good life. But we bought at that, we'd sell a house, but we'd always pay in cash after that first one, the mobile home in Arkansas.
And we lived in it.
We couldn't. But once we sold that, I think we bought it for 20. We got 26. This is all in my Sticking It to the Matrix book, by the way, how we did this. But then once you get that $26,000 in your pocket, even though you only made a little bit, you saved all that rent, but then you got $26,000 in your pocket because you've already paid it off. And actually paid it off in a year. And it was a 5-year contract, and the guy was so blown away that I just saved all that money from working a $7 an hour job at Beaver Dam and was able to just pay that off.
Yeah, we had a lot of baloney.
We did. We sacrificed, which is what people have to do if they want to get out of debt and they want to get free.
I think that's when I started saving seeds too, is because seeds were expensive and we didn't really have a lot of money. That's right.
Let's just see if this works.
Let's throw some of those tomatoes in the ground. Yeah.
And so then, so we learned a lot there, but it was hard. But so then, we had that 26,000. So we were able to buy another house in Bemidji for 20,000 down the road and cash. And it wasn't borrowed, it was cash. So then we sold that, made on that. And then we had that chunk, and then another house, another chunk. And so
But we didn't buy them, fix them up, and then sell them like that. We lived in them.
Flippers. We weren't
not
like
flippers.
We lived there a long time.
We lived there
and improved them a bunch.
Yeah.
And that was our primary residence, and all that. So
and when he says we improved it, I mean, we're not dumping life savings into it. We're painting it, we're cleaning it, we're putting in a little garden. We're fixing fences or whatever. But it's sweat equity, not money equity. We try to spend as little as we could, because we didn't have a lot, and we knew that in the end we needed to roll that back out into cash. So you got to think about how much you're putting into it too. I mean, I'm not going to drop $20,000 into a house, but we made those houses nice. That first house in Bemidji, it had like brown shag carpet and shiny wallpaper and lots of cracks in the plaster, and
these are fixer-uppers.
All
the way.
And so we gave them a pretty face. We fixed them up, made them look good again.
And then but the dogs in Peace Valley passed away. We got more and more into gardening in Peace Valley. She really got into the herbs then and planted all perennial herbs. I ran for Congress in 2004, which, I hated the Democrats as much as the Republicans even then, but
no one was running. And
nobody was running. So I said, okay, I run as a Democrat. And of course, that's a death sentence in Missouri. You're not going to win if you run as a Democrat. So I knew I wasn't going to win. It was just a revolutionary act because I wanted to get the information out to people.
And they were different Democrats then.
Well, somewhat,
a little
some
different.
of them, the locals, but so I just, but because of the things I was saying, I became very kind of like a superstar on the Democrat tour, and I would speak like after Clara McCaskill, who won the governorship in Missouri, because I was a better speaker than she was, and stuff like that. And they had to pay attention, and the local people, the local Democrats got to really liking me, but the national Democrats and the state Democrats starved me out of money, wouldn't give me anything.
That's because you didn't ask permission.
Because I didn't kiss their ass, and I didn't, take PAC money and all. Anyways, it was an experience because
they want you to go through their channels. They don't want you doing it on your own. That's a no.
No, and then they want you to ask, and they want you to climb the ladder, and not just run. And the reason I did it was because they told me that local Democrats, there was a big wheel that kind of controlled everything. Travis Morrison's his name. I'll say his name. He runs a concrete company in West Plains, and he was good friends with my opponent, the Republican Joanne Emerson. And so pretty much when I won the primary, which I did in the Democrat Party, he said, I'm going to vote for Joanne. And just told me that, didn't tell anybody else, put on airs that he liked me, put on airs this and that. But I was supposed to run. I had to be in this old 90-year-old woman Democrat. She said, you should run for state representative. So I was gonna, and I went that morning to the Holiday Inn where they were having this little powwow to announce that I was going to run. And when I got there, they had already put somebody else, the guy's brother, in my place to run. And so they cut my throat. They were trying to keep me out of it because they knew what I was about. They'd heard. And so I said, okay, just on the fly, within the next 15 minutes, I decided, okay, I'm going to run for U.S. House of Representatives then in that case. And I announced it, and I did. And
everybody was just like,
and I went and signed the papers in Jeff City the next day because the sons of bitches were, trying to do what they do. So there's all these gatekeepers. It's all about the gatekeepers. And I really learned a lot about how the whole process works in the U.S. with these gatekeepers in both parties that sort of, try to keep certain people from running. Okay, so, but anyway, the dogs passed away. We went to, let's see, we took a trip to where?
Venezuela?
Well, no, Thailand.
Oh, that's right, that one.
Got a one-way ticket to Thailand, and then Malaysia, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and then back home. And that was about a 6-month trip. So we got back to Missouri, and what did we do? We bought another farm, another fixer-upper, by Alton, Missouri. And that was the best
garden. Dug another garden.
Because that was actually good soil, which is hard to find in the Ozarks. But it was
like a 2-acre garden.
Top of the hill, there was a dip in the top of the hill, and it was just really good soil. And they'd had animals, they'd had goats and stuff there, and horses, and so there's a lot of manure in the soil.
The far past,
and we just really had a really great garden there. I think we canned 64 quarts of tomatoes
at least,
1 year.
Huge. That's just tomatoes.
Yeah, huge strawberry. We had
sweet
asparagus,
potatoes,
sweet
grapes,
peppers, sweet corn, best sweet corn I ever grew.
Everything.
potatoes, everything. And that was the best. Yeah, that was the best garden. But we got better at it too, and we saved our own seeds, and we never bought things. We, people go nuts.
Yeah.
The organic people, even they go, oh, let's buy some black plastic, or let's buy a hoop house, or all these fancy things that they think is going to make you free. But what's going to make you free is not buying anything.
Yeah.
And you be a producer, not a consumer. That's the key. And that's what people don't understand. They can be all politically correct, but if you're still consuming more than you're producing, then it doesn't. We always said in South Dakota, us all farmers, we say it don't pencil out. If it don't pencil out, you don't do it.
Yeah.
So we learned to make it pencil out.
Well, and we would just I'd go out and find stuff. If I wanted a greenhouse, well, get some wood and some old plastic from one of the stores where they where they sell mattresses. You get these huge chunks of plastic. I'll just recycle them, use them until they're done, and then we'd take care of that after they're done. But I mean, we were always rigging up stuff, we didn't buy anything, and it was always kind of fun to see what we could pull off.
Yeah.
Like our grape arbor, and we didn't buy anything for that. We found it all. It was either in the trash, it was in somebody else's junk pile, it was along the side of the road. Whatever, we were walking along. Oh, hey, there's some wire. Grab it. We'll use it for this. And so we were always trying to make it not be part of the shopping.
Starve the beast.
Starving.
We
the
learned
beast.
a lot from Coyote. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
my animal is kind of Coyote. And Coyote, what's he do? He just scavenges what other animals get and leave and don't want. And same with vulture. And there's a lot, and they clean up stuff. Mark Twain said the vulture should be the U.S. national bird because it cleans up everything and it takes care of it. So we clean up stuff that other people don't want, and we put it to use back into the slipstream and get some more use out of it. Like we don't buy trash bags. Don't ever buy a trash bag. It's ridiculous. I mean, how many chemical plants do you want to go up on your block? It's because you're part of it. So you have to, we use the plastic grocery bags, and don't trip out about paper or plastic or taking your own bags. Use the plastic one again for a trash bag.
Or anything
simple
else.
Things like that, or other things, but simple things like that. But you just have to be a scavenger because
don't buy plastic. Like don't buy, you get canning jars of spaghetti sauce come in, all kinds of stuff. Use those for your storage containers, and I mean they're free, and you're keeping them out of the landfill. Spend in a glass or, and there's all kinds of stuff. Go to the thrift store, repurpose things, take stuff that friends offer you.
Yeah. So we lived in Alden for 3 years. We sold that place. We went to, that's when we got a one-way ticket to Johannesburg. And, and we went to South Africa. We visited Kruger National Park, which it's beautiful. It's awesome, and all the animals. And a lot of people think it's the best national park in Africa, the entire continent. No, Darwin's in Australia.
Oh, sorry, Africa.
Nels Pruitt. We were Nels Pruitt.
That's
and then we went to Swaziland and Lesotho, and then we went up to Botswana, and then to Zimbabwe and seen Victoria Falls. I guess while we were out, we actually flew to South America. We got frequent flyer miles to where we had a free trip all the way to Argentina and back. And so we also went to Iguazu Falls in Argentina, which is amazing. It's the most amazing place.
Dean writes a lot about our travels and his travels alone.
The Grateful and Rich. That's what that book's all about. And that's like Mark Twain phrase, the Grateful and Rich. I typed it from Mark Twain. And he meant like the people that fawn at the feet of the rich, and kiss their ass, but they'll never be rich. But they're so grateful to the rich. He meant that. And I mean that too in this book, because I, do my typical political stuff. But I also mean the double entendre, because it's also the fact that these people in the third world have taught me so much about how to be a coyote, about how to be a scavenger,
and being happy,
about how to be happy. Yeah. Because it's not about the stuff and the money, and it's not about possessions or being possessed by your possessions, which happens all the time in America. People get possessed by their possessions. It's about simple life and loving, and these people taught me so much. They actually taught me, really, they reinforced what my dad taught me, what the Lakota taught me, and they taught me the same things.
So many things, we'd be with somebody or look at somebody's yard, their gardens, seeing how they did things. They didn't have, they do now, but they didn't have like access to chemicals and pesticides and herbicides mostly. They were just trying to do it on their own. And so they taught us a lot about living simply and how to do things without all these other inputs, whether it was fixing your house, fixing your car, building a structure. You know, they were great people all over the world that when you live in poverty and you have to find some other way to do whatever it is you want to do without money. And these folks, well, they're so gracious too. And a lot of them would take us around their gardens and show us their places and tell us different things. And we learned so much from them on every level of our lives. You know, how to live simply, how to be grateful, how to, you know, appreciate the little things, how to be kind to strangers. I mean, how many times did we travel that we would be walking down the road and all we had was just a backpack each, you know, just traveling really lightly. People would just stop and maybe we're walking to a bus station 4 miles away and people would stop and say, "Where are you going?" And we'd tell them and they'd drive us all the way there. You know, they drive us, you know, 50 miles out of their way. Literally.
We in the Philippines one time, Catanduanes Island, and we had this guy, Felix Santos, and we met these Australian, he was a surfer, it was a couple, and we were the only white people on this Catanduanes Island because it's pretty remote, and that's why I went there. I want to check it out. But we ran into these Aussie surfers, and they had met another guy, Popeye Felix Santos was his name. So they said, he invited us to his house. It's even more remote. It's up here, you know.
Come with us.
Come with us. So we said, yeah, let's go. Jumped in the back of a dump truck, hitchhiked a ride in the back of a dump truck. There
and then a medical supply truck.
Yeah, then an ambulance basically.
Get there at the middle of the night.
And it was 10 at night, and we go to his door, and he didn't know us from Adam, and he'd only met Michael one time
he wasn't
in
there,
Australia.
his daughters were
He
there.
wasn't even there. And it was just his daughters. Like
grown daughters. And they said, "Oh, okay,
and
come
like,
on
oh,
in."
You know, Felix, come on in. You know, he wasn't even there. And
they gave us their beds.
We
were like, no, and they gave us their beds.
Started running out to get this local Ginebra, this alcohol for us.
And next thing you know,
party.
It is a party. The
next
whole
day,
town's
Felix
there.
comes home and he goes, "Dean, come here," because we hit it off right away. And he said, "Dean, come here." And he's like, "Come back here. I want to show you something." And he's got 3 really skinny pigs in his back of his house, in a pen. And he said, "That one's for you." I said, "No, man, don't do that. You guys, I mean, we got so much more than you. We'll bring you food. You know, we're going to provide today." And so we came back and
what happened was when that morning they said, "Well, tomorrow we're going to go to this waterfall."
Yeah.
This is a little village, mind you. There's hardly any lights in the village, like people's houses, but not on the streets, dirt streets, out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe 200 people max in this whole village. And the guys that were telling us how to get to Mr. Santos's house, they were fun. I mean, we had this whole troop of people taking us there to make sure that we got there. These 4, you know,
pretty much the whole
white
town.
people. And then they said, after we drank and karaoke'd all night, they said, "We're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to go to the waterfall." And we said, "Okay." So in the morning, you know, Mr. Santos shows back up and we talk and everything. And he says, "Well, I'm going to stay here," but then they're coming to get us. And it was 3 people came to get us. And it was the 4 of us, Dean and I and the other couple we were with, and another person from the house. And we started walking through the village towards the waterfall. And as we walked through, someone would just sort of fall in line, and another couple or 3 more people. And by the time we got to the waterfall, there was 20 people with us, and everybody was all jacked up to go to the waterfall. And it was this gorgeous, huge waterfall. You could jump off it into this beautiful, you know, emerald pool. It was amazing. And they started busting out banana leaves, and they had all this stuff in their rucksacks. And they started a fire, and they started cooking a chicken in a pot and rice. And before we knew it, they had this whole meal going. But before we left, and that was a beautiful day. But before we left, Dean had this interaction with Mr. Santos, who said, "This one's for you." Yeah, and when we got back to the thing,
the banana leaves were the plates.
The banana leaves were the plates. We ate off them. But when we got back to the house,
we got back, and even though I protested and said, "Don't do it," there was the pig's head sitting on the counter.
And they had cooked it, roasted it up. It was all ready, all this stuff.
And I've had that happen so many times.
And then another big party, the whole village came. It was just amazing.
In the so-called third world. So people are just happier. So they're the grateful and rich.
They are the grateful.
You know what? Russia is calling.
Yeah.
You have not mentioned Russia.
Yeah,
No, you've never
I
been?
know. Tell me about it. I want to go there really bad. And
Yeah.
And you'll need a letter of invitation, which I will get for you.
Nice.
And you know, it's an enormous country,
Yes.
185 different ethnic groups
Yeah.
and languages, but the
Yeah.
common language is Russian. But I want to tell you something. Um, I hope you can get here sooner than later.
Yeah.
You know, the people who lived during the Soviet era had nothing.
Yeah.
They knew how to survive. They lived in
Mhm.
villages. They planted gardens.
Yep.
They bartered back and forth. They took care of each other.
Yep.
And when you meet some of these people today, like I have, who now are in their 70s and 80s and maybe even 90, will tell you the stories. And um, you know, I find it's really amazing listening to you talk about being self-sufficient. My goodness, these older people today, not the younger ones. The younger ones totally ruined. They're consumers, they're capitalists. They want to go make a lot of money. They want a big house, they want a Mercedes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that here.
Yeah.
But these older people, they save everything. They convert everything. They use things over and over again. And I'm saying, why are you keeping all this stuff? Throw it away. No, I might have a use for this someday. Listen, this has been fascinating. I'm not ready to stop because I have a couple more questions if you have some time.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah? All right. You guys ought to. I don't think you should write a book. Did you take pictures and video when you went to all these countries?
Yeah, pictures. Yeah,
Yeah,
mostly.
some places more than others. It just depended on if we had a camera or not.
Yeah, we've got.
Oh my
Sometimes
God.
we didn't have camera.
You ought to do a video. Forget writing a book. Just
Yeah.
do a video with a narration under it, just like you've been talking to me now.
Yeah.
That would be so interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dean, I want to know. I think our audience has learned a great deal from the two of you. And Dean, because you were really well known with, I think maybe tens of thousands, maybe millions of people. I don't think a lot of people knew your background and knew who you are and where you came from and how you arrived at where you are today. A lot of people think that you're just about political analysis. You know, you're on a lot of shows, and this is what you talk about. I want to know, when did you begin writing? What was that in graduate school as a result of graduate? But when did you begin? And so tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think the first writing idea was poetry. Yeah, I took a poetry class at South Dakota State, and I pretty much thought the professor was a nut job and wrong about everything. But I just like, maybe I wanted to like show him how to write poetry, but it's probably not very good. But I mean, I put all that all that poetry I wrote early days in college. So as an undergrad, it was the second year of undergrad. I think I started writing poetry, and I have incorporated all those poems, by the way, into my Grateful and Rich book, because I don't let writing go to waste. I've learned to use everything I've ever wrote and put it in a book somewhere somehow, because why not? You know, I'm a Gemini, so I'm kind of an efficiency freak. Okay, too. So now you know that about me. I like to be efficient because I don't like wasted energy. I like to, like people say, let's get two things done with one, act, and that's true as a farmer. But I like getting three things done by one act, and you can do that. I've done it. It's crazy, but you have to, because you're up against the system, and you have to be as efficient as possible with your time and with your work. So yeah, I started then, and then I went to the USD. I guess I kept writing poetry. I guess really, when I went into graduate school, I was a columnist for the Montana Kindman also, which is the University of Montana newspaper. And that was a heyday time for writing. People know about Rick Bass, they know about Bill McKibben, they know about Wallace Stegner, they know about a lot of writers that came out of Missoula, but we pioneered all that. We came before them. In Montana Kind, we had Woody Kipp, was a columnist. He was a Blackfeet Indian, really good writer. I was a columnist, and we had some really, it was a heyday. We had some really good columnists. We woke a lot of people up. We got a lot of people marching in the streets over the Gulf War, and we raised hell. And then I started also as an independent study project, which I got 9 credits for. Instead of going to class that whole semester, I said, I'm going to write a newspaper. Instead, I'm going to put out an alternative newspaper. And I had a pretty cool chair of the department, Tom Roy, that said, yeah, that's fine. That's, that's better yet, So I did that, and I put out, it was called the Missoula paper. We didn't, it was very crude. We bought a rubber stamp that said the Missoula paper, and we'd stamp like every single copy. There was 1,000 copies.
We'd have stamping parties.
And we'd have stamping parties. And then we bought the little lines from, whatever. And
the divider lines were like
vinyl,
and you peel and stick them. And
you got to understand, we didn't have the internet then.
And then we'd make photocopies of
we'd go take them down to photocopy, which was the only expense, but it was
and
expensive.
we cut out things and paste them on the paper. It was crazy.
Just did it real, again, as cheap as we could do it. Again, and there was no internet at that time. You have to remember, I wrote my thesis without the internet, and it was 144 pages. Yeah. And I wrote that about the Gulf War, and it's called Political Economy and Middle East Oil. So it was really about who are these GCC countries, who are the Saudis, the Kuwaitis, all these countries, and how do they work with the big oil companies to sort of rob the nationalist Arabs of their oil, which is what they do. And that became my big oil book. That became my first book, which I wrote at Peace Valley in 2004.
And he put it off for quite a while because he was a little concerned that who would come after us, and we were just newly married and stuff.
Yeah. But they came after us anyway.
They came after us anyway.
And it didn't matter. And actually,
they came after us even before that. When he was doing the Missoula paper, we had people creeping around our house and sitting outside waiting for us in the morning and taking photographs of us and stuff.
Yeah, they tried to kill me twice. They failed. I won't get into it. But at any rate, so that's when I started writing, and I just kept writing. And then when I went traveling, all the travels, I kept my notes, so, even before I went to University of Montana, between graduate school and undergrad. So first I went to Alaska. I was a fishing guide on the Katmai Peninsula, guided John Denver, in fact. He's the only decent guy I guided. The rest of them were asshole Wall Street people. One guy, we taught him to cut their line when a bear gets on the line, because we fish next to Kodiaks, next to brown bears every day, very close. And the rule was, if a bear gets on your fish that you have on the hook, you cut your line. You let him have it. Well, this one Wall Street guy wouldn't do that. And so I had to end up getting between him and the bear and, putting my life at risk and just, scared away. And luckily I did. And, I turned around, I took his fishing rod, this $1 million fishing rod or whatever he had, and I just broke it over my leg. And I said, get on the plane. You're going back to the lodge. And the pilot, Harry, backed me up. He's like, yep, get on the plane, man. You put that dude's life at risk. So anyway, I went to Alaska. We saved money from that. Again, me and Brian Clausen, this guy, a friend of mine, and we went down did the Mayan route through Mexico, Guatemala, whatever. And the whole time then I'm starting to write. And I'd switch from the trombone to the harmonica because it's more portable. They play music and, all that stuff. And, but yeah, then, so that became my Grateful and Rich book. Eventually was all the notes from all the travels. It's pretty interesting because I start writing that book when I'm like 19. And when I'm done with the book, I'm 45. So just to see the change in my perspective, is kind of interesting. But that's what that is. And then when we got settled into Pottersville after Africa, we went back, bought one more farm in Pottersville, Missouri, 40 acres that time. Really nice place. And gardens, pigs, chickens, ducks. The cats came to us, so that's where we got the cats. And so we've had dogs and cats now, and I love both of them. I don't have a preference. I love them both. I love all animals. Here it's dolphins. We talk to dolphins, and they come see us about every day down here in Florida where we're wintering. So we have a thing with animals because we understand that they can communicate with us, and we take it seriously, and we communicate back. All
right. So let me jump in here. You talked about dogs and cats. In your latest book, The Royal Bloodline, Wetiko, and the Great Remembering, you relate some personal stories, and in one of the chapters, you talk about your cats, and the names are hilarious. I laugh every time I look at it. I laugh, but there was a mama cat. It was out in the woods or something, and she had 3 kittens.
Yes.
You named Mama Boots. Tell me that story now.
Well, she had boots. She was a little gray. They called them tuxedos, and so a tuxedo cat is a solid color with maybe like a little white thing going here and little white boots, and maybe on the back feet. And she was a gray tuxedo, and we called her Boots. And or a lot of times we just called her Mama Kitty. But she brought her. Well, we went tubing. It was Dean's birthday. Not tubing. We went kayaking down in Arkansas on the White River, or the Buffalo River. That was it, on the Buffalo River. It was a beautiful day, super hot because it was in June. And when we got home from kayaking with friends, Mama Kitty and 2 kittens were waiting on the porch for us. And I said, "Happy birthday. There's your birthday present." And then later that night, we could hear some meowing outside one of our windows. And I looked out, and it looked like one of the kittens that was on the porch already, because we got them all squared up and fed and watered and a little place to sleep and shelter. And so I thought they were just kind of running around. And I looked out and I saw another cat, and I said, Dean, I think this is another one. And that turned out to be slow Laura's. But anyway, so as we had them for a while, a little while.
Wait a minute. Hold on. You're going too fast. The first 2 kittens, Harvey Wallbanger and Silent Bob. Come on. You have to explain this.
Well, we didn't name them all till they were all back together, because we weren't sure even that we were going to keep them, but we would, we just called them kitties. But
so let me take it. Silent Bob, because Bob was the primary hunter. He was the provider right off the bat for the other kittens, and they were really good hunters. But he was a stoic, he didn't meow. He wasn't needy. He didn't talk. He would just show up with mice and literally give them to his brothers. And then sometimes he'd keep one for himself, but they'd always work together.
After they grew up a little, right?
Harvey Wallbanger, because Harvey was the one who would just get up on the counter and eat your sandwich.
Or climb the screens. He walked the screens.
He'd wake us up in the morning, climbing all the screens and jumping around each screen in the whole house and tearing them up. He was a train wreck. Okay.
And Loris was the slow one.
Loris was.
All right. Now wait a minute. Now explain how Slow Loris got his name.
Well, because so we woke up the next morning, and it was Loris that we saw out of the window, and we realized there was a 3rd kitten. And so for, I don't know, days, like maybe a week almost, Mama Kitty was running herself crazy, running back in the woods to feed, because they were still nursing. They were like not even 6 weeks old. And she had the 2 kittens on the porch, and Loris was out in the woods, and he wouldn't come in. And we could see him sometimes, but he would not come in. And every time he saw us, he'd run. And so she was driving herself crazy. And so one day we just grabbed both the kittens, the other 2 kittens, Harvey and Bob and Mama Kitty, and we headed out towards the woods and sort of lured him with them, used them like bait. And when he showed himself, we just basically ran him down and grabbed him. And once we had our hands on him, he was like, "That's it. Okay, I'm done." And he was fine. That was it forevermore. It's like he didn't have any problem, but we had to get our hands on him. And once we got our hands on him and put him back on the porch with everybody else, he was like, "Okay, cool, I'm good." So that's why we called him Slow Loris. And he's also.
When was that? How many years ago was that?
2012.
He'll be 12 in April.
So he'll be 12.
So yeah, Harvey Wallbanter. Banger.
Yeah, Harvey Wallbanger.
And Silent Bob. They passed away, correct?
Yeah.
So you have Slow Loris now with you.
Right.
Does he travel with you?
He travels everywhere I go, he goes. And that's what keeps me in the U.S., honestly, for now, because I refuse to get him vaccinated.
Yeah.
And every airline, even if the country doesn't require, which many don't, but the airline requires it, and I just don't want to poison him. So, but the other reason he's Slow Loris is he just moves really slow, and he's a little slower than the rest of the kids. And it did turn out to be the right name.
But he doesn't trust everybody,
He doesn't trust anybody except us. So he's very careful.
Very careful.
And he's taught me a lot as far as, you don't have to be everybody's buddy. You don't have to go showing your affection to everybody in the whole world. You just have to care about your family. And that's what's so special about him is he saves all his love for us, but he can literally sit there all day and just get pet all day and give you love back. And he's just the most loving creature, honestly, I've ever experienced. And it blows me away because he just puts every person I've ever met, including myself, to shame. I mean, and he's my role model. I call him my role model. I mean, and I mean that. Like, that's what I want to be like, is that cat right there. And so I do believe he's like a white buffalo calf. Like, he's more than just a cat. He's probably our old dog Milo, first of all, but he's even more than that, because there's just something about Loris that when Loris passes, I got to get him to old age. Okay. If I get him to old age and he dies of old age, we're fine. If he doesn't, it's not just us that's going to have problems. There's something bad in the world that's going to happen big time. And because he's more than just a cat, and he's just, I can't explain it. That's the best I can explain it. But the Indians would call that like a white buffalo calf, like a sign. Like, if a white buffalo calf is born, it's a sign of something big to come. And this is my little white buffalo calf, Yeah. And I take that.
You talk a lot in your book, the most recent one, about the relationship that we've lost. And you learned a great deal from the Lakota Sioux about being connected to nature. You don't take more than you need. You give back. You respect everything. Tell me a little bit more about what you've learned from the animal world, because you've got a wonderful story in your book about, I think it was a Brit or something, wanted to go shoot a bear or something like this, and you talked about how you have to establish that relationship, that we're animals just like they are, and we have to. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm brutalizing what you wrote. It was so beautiful.
It was like the one about where they tell you that it's okay to take them. I think it was a whale or something.
I mean, animals are here to be our brothers and our teachers and our sisters, and they're all of that. And we're supposed to pay attention to them and learn from them. And they are, in a way, much better than us, because they provide us with food. They die so we can eat. And that's you can be a vegetarian, but that doesn't fix that problem. That doesn't solve that conundrum. You're still taking a lettuce plant that's died so you can eat it. So the key is not to starve yourself out. God or Wakantanka or Creator put all these things here for us. But the key is to have a relationship to that creature and to thank it for its giving its life so you could eat, right?
We do that with plants as well. When you're wild harvesting, you do it with plants as
well. You always
well.
want to do that, whatever you're picking up, a rock, a shell, doesn't matter. You want to thank that. You want to have a relationship with that. You say, is it okay if I take you to a different place if you're going to do that? I don't do that, but some people do that. But you have to. And so here we get to Florida, and what happens? We move into this house. We're renting it from a woman. She went sailing to the Bahamas. And she never saw dolphins out here much. She said she made a big deal, like, well, I've seen dolphins once. We see them every day.
Every day.
We see them every day. We'll get company, they won't come. Then they leave and they'll come back. They had fireworks over New Year's Eve, that scared them away. But then they come back. But they come to us because they understand that we take that seriously. We understand that we can talk to them. And her 13-year-old niece was here yesterday.
A great niece.
And right before, great niece. And right before she left, I said, we're going to get those dolphins in here so you can see them, Kylie. And we got a kayak here, and we went down. I said, look, I got the life jackets out.
We kind of willed them in.
I got the life jackets out. I got the flare out. I said, we're going to go down there. You ready? And we walk out the door. And the minute we walk out the door, there's the dolphins. And her and Jill got in the kayak, and we were able to get right up next to them, and had, I think 3 of them swimming around.
Oh, they were awesome. They were fishing.
Because I asked them, would you come for this kid? This kid needs help. This kid's, first of all, addicted to phones really bad. And it's a lot of families, stuff happened to her. It's not good. So she needs outdoors. She needs that. She needs that like therapy. But we all do. We all do. And especially now, everyone's on their phones. They're taking them further away from nature, further away from that understanding. People don't pay attention. so simple. All you got to do is pay attention. All you got to do is observe, just pay attention. But people don't know how to do that anymore. That simple thing, just pay attention, because they're just always caught up in some screen, whether it's a computer, a phone, a TV, watching this illusory world, this imaginary world where it's all satanic. It's all feeding you bad information. It's all teaching you bad lessons. It's teaching you just the opposite of the things we just talked about, how to live simple. That's funny on TV. It's funny. You know, they make fun of those people that live that way. They make fun of the Indians that, oh, they think they could talk to the animals. Yeah,
they
they're
could.
smart. And you're an idiot.
And they could.
And you're an idiot. So the lines are being drawn, but you know, increasingly, yeah, there's just less people that understand that. But like you say, the old people, same here. The old people understand that. The old people understand how to live simple. The old people understand a lot, but the young kids, yeah, I'm worried about them.
Well, you know, everybody talks to their dog, they talk to their cats, they talk to horses, but then if you're talking to a deer or a dolphin or, you know, a butterfly, they think you're crazy. And I have butterflies land on me all the time because I ask them to when they come by.
Mhm.
And it's amazing. And I can call hawks all the time. And if you see them, are bald eagles and they're soaring by, I can call them and they'll come back and
Just
have
try
a
it.
look.
Just
You
try
know,
it.
they'll come back and circle around, just have a good look, and then take off. But
But,
we can all. Everyone can do it. You just have to open your mind and your heart to it.
There's a lot of stories in that book, though. And one of them I want to point out, I think it's the very end of the book. So, you know, there's all this stuff about, you know, like people don't understand things. Okay. So, you know, they think, when deer get in the rut, it's like a gangbang in the woods, and the deer are sexual because we're over sexualized by our culture. You know, everything's about sex, and you know, we're stupid. Okay. So deer don't have sex except when they want to have a baby, which is what humans used to do too. Everything does that. That's the natural way. Does don't chase bucks like women don't chase men. That's not natural. You might have been taught to chase men, but you don't really do that naturally. Men don't chase women and abuse them and over sexualize them either. That's just something. So it's the thing where, like, you know, we watch the rut. We watch it all the time. I've seen it many, many times. I've never seen two bucks fighting each other ever, not once over a doe. Never. They'll chase them together, and the best, you know, one that gets there first, maybe. Okay. And it's not always the biggest buck either. A lot of times it's a young one. So it's all these myths, the Royal Society myths telling us, you know, might is right, and this is such a brutish world, and Thomas Locke and Hobbes and all this crap. But you watch the deer. So I was watching the deer, and I've been watching this herd of deer behind our place in South Dakota, where we live most of the time, and we observe them. This is how it works. So it kind of surprised me because there's this big old buck. He's the biggest one. He's been there forever. He's obviously learned how to survive. They go and they just sit down in one place during hunting season. They don't move. That's what they do. They don't move. They sit there. And that's how they survive. The smart ones, they get old, they get bigger horns every year. They shed their horns, but the next time they come back bigger. So this old buck, when we first got there, he would be the one that when the herd was going to cross the highway, head up the hill, he would take them across. He'd be last, and he'd be looking both ways, and he'd be making sure that the does and the fawns and the young bucks would, you know, make it safely. So then by the end of that fourth year, I noticed that the old buck, now he would get in the front, not in the front, but in the middle kind of, and he would go across first. And the younger buck had taken over, had as far as being the warrior, being the sentinel, being the primary protector of that bunch. And he was the one now that was standing there, and I was out there looking and helping him and telling him I'll help you, and he understood it. He understood it. They understand it. And in fact, when we left Spearfish this time, we had this parade of turkeys just go around our. I'm not kidding.
No,
around
the day
our
before I
apartment.
left, they did, and they would come, you know, from time to time. But it just so happened that
It's
day.
the only time I did that.
And Dean says, "Come out here, come out here." And I walk out and I look around the side of the building, and it looks like a scene from Bambi. Like there's all the deer, all our deer friends are there. There's like a flock of turkeys. You know, there's birds in the trees, and they're all just like the bunnies. We call them all Fred. There was a bunch of bunnies there. They were all hanging out right there. We're just like, whoa. And then the turkeys started a parade, and they paraded all the way around the building.
They were just telling us goodbye.
All the way around, and then
telling us come back safe. And they were telling us that we're going to protect this building while you're gone. We're going to put a circle of good energy around it.
It was crazy.
And we're going to take care of this place while you're gone. So
they know
it's all real. It's just a matter of dumb European colonialist mentality. Wetiko. It's the Wetiko. putting yourself separate, putting yourself above the rest of creation, separating yourself from it, thinking humans are so smart, we're so much smarter. I don't think so. I know dolphins got twice as big a brain as we got. I think most animals are way smarter than humans. I mean, I think we're at the bottom maybe of the chain as far as intelligence goes, from what I've seen, from what I was observed in my life. And then in that order, it's like upside down pyramid where the poor people are way smarter than the rich people. The rich people tell you they're really smart. They'll pray at every meal and tell you how religious they are. They'll do a lot of stuff to deceive you with their forked tongues. The Indians call them forked tongues. But it's all a show to hide behind, because in fact they're psychopaths and savages. And the real human beings are the simple people and the Indians, who understand that they're right there with the animals, and they're humble people. They don't think haughtily of themselves, or that they're so smart or better than people. They blend in with the rest of creation, and they don't have to control things. They're not control freaks. You don't have to do, they don't have to run other people's lives and tell them how to live and what to eat and how to dress. And they don't do that. But the Watikos rise to the top of Western society and control things. And that's why you have in Israel bombing hospitals, bombing ambulances, bombing schools, bombing, just genociding people. And that's why many people in the West don't even care. They don't even care, because they're so into their own narcissism and their own complicated lives that they make complicated with their Watiko thinking, because they don't understand the nature of reality, that they just, this is where we're at. So it's gotten to a tipping point. Something's going to happen. Something big's coming. It's going to be bad. It's going to be good, but it's going to happen. It has to happen. So,
yeah. Boy, I can't thank the two of you enough. This has just been a fascinating evening for me, morning for you, to learn about this incredible journey, this incredible relationship the two of you have with each other, with animals, with the plants, with everything around you. It's going to sound foreign to a lot of people. Some people may even think you're crazy, but I think most people are trapped, including me, are trapped in a life cycle and don't have the opportunity, for a variety of reasons, to travel the world as much as you two have, to learn from others as much as you two have, and to learn from the life that you've shared together. You're very fortunate that you've been so compatible. I just take my hat off to you. I'm impressed. I'm honored to know the two of you. I want to finish now with a chapter in your book. I think it might be the last chapter. Slow Loris returns to the land of Crazy Horse. Explain to me what that's all about.
Well, we sold that last place in Missouri in November 2019. And we didn't really know where we'd go. And then we just we do it sometimes. It's just like pull a straw of a hat. My sister has a cabin in the Black Hills of South Dakota, so my home state, and said you can stay there for the winter. And
the house sold suddenly. Remember, we had been getting ready to sell it, and then all of a sudden it was like boom, boom, and we were like, whoa,
we didn't really have a
we
plan.
weren't ready,
So we went up and stayed at my sister's for a couple of nights, and then we moved to Hot Springs for a while because they got Evidence Plunge, which is this really therapeutic hot spring mineral bath place. Yeah, and then we moved to Spearfish, which is where we live. And
where is that now?
It's in western South Dakota.
In the Black
Hills. The Black Hills, which the Lakota call the Pahasapa.
What's the name of it? What's the name of it?
The town is Spearfish.
Oh, Spearfish. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's where we primarily, we've been there about 4 years. So we got there November 19, right before COVID. So again, Creator was taking care of us because, it got crazy everywhere. But South Dakota was the only state that didn't declare martial law and suspend the Constitution. And we didn't put up with it. Walmart tried to mask people up, and we didn't. We just go in. Everybody in the whole town would just go in. Within 3 days, they quit trying.
Yeah.
And there were no lockdowns. There were no curfews. There was no anything. It was pretty much, there was a week or two where, some restaurants would shut down voluntarily, but there was never any rules that said you have to do this, that, the other, whatever.
And if you walked into a place without your mask, they could decide. That's what everybody decided, is that it's up to the business owner. If they don't want you to come in without a mask, that's their decision. But you don't have to go in there.
But
either.
none of them cared.
and none of them did.
None of them did.
So
it's a really good place to be. It's also my home state, so it's like full circle, right? So it's like my life now is full circle. And now we're down here visiting her side of the family in this area because, she hasn't been able to see them for, as much, because we do live a long ways away. It's a long ways. It's 1,800 miles from where we're at now to there. But everything we own fits in a Ford Fiesta.
Sedan.
Still, to this day. And most of it's your art.
Most of it's my art junk, seriously.
But we still live this way. We still live really simple. I mean, and so anyway, Slow Loris returns to the land of Crazy Horse is just kind of literally that. And there's just something about the Black Hills of South Dakota. I feel like it's a stronghold, and that's where Crazy Horse and the Lakota people, that's where they'd winter. They'd go to the Black Hills to winter because it was, and to hunt elk and to fish and certain things. And it was a very sacred place to them. And it's the oldest rock formation in the United States. It's older than the Appalachians. It's older than the Ozarks. Very stable. I say that there'll be an earthquake tomorrow. The engineer, but very stable. It's very low population, so there's not many people in the area, which right now in this current epoch is a good thing for me anyway, because I love the people. I hate the system, but most people love the system, hate the people. And they want to attack you if you're different and if you talk the truth, because they've trained them to do that. So, you just the less people is better. And so, it's just like a full circle deal. And we live in a place of nature. I've always had to live in beautiful places, whether it's Montana, northern Minnesota, the Ozarks, the Black Hills, here in Panama City, Florida. It's beautiful places, And I have to have that. I have to have that, because if I don't have that, I lose my way and I get cynical and I get negative. And I need the positivity of nature to counter what I see as the people just getting washed out. And unfortunately, 95% of the people are washed out on technology. And that's just a fact. A lot of people I love, a lot of people I know, a lot of my family, a lot of my friends. I don't know too many who aren't. And it's really changed them, and it's really made them mean, and it's made them very shallow and very superficial. And I'm not going to be like that. So we're going to go back to places where nature is, and that's where we're gonna get our energy, and we're going to get our connection. And I have to keep that connection. That's really important. And Slow Loris again is a symbol, a metaphor of that, of also going slow in life. And not moving too fast.
Being deliberate.
Yeah, being deliberate, making decisions, and not moving too fast. Because one of the things that technology does, it speeds people up. And one of the things that controllers want is for you to be sped up, so you can't make decisions. They want you in a panic. They want you
distracted.
Moving like this. And how many people do you know? They're just on their phones and they're just.
Hard to have a conversation with somebody who's looking at something else on the phone.
No.
Like you see those people in restaurants. You see like the younger kids and maybe some older parents or grandparents, and the kids are all on their phone, and the parents are sitting there going like.
Well, usually the parents are actually on the phone.
I mean, like the grandparents, the older ones, and they're not
really
talking.
But my mom's the one that gets this. I swear, and she's like 85, and she hates technology, and she hates it when people come to her house and to just ignore her and do this. And I do too. And sometimes you gotta be the bad guy and just say, "Could you just turn your phone off, please?"
Yeah.
Because it'd be like me coming into your house, and I smoke cigarettes. I shouldn't, but I don't ever blow it in people's face. I don't ever smoke it in their house. I go way away from them because I respect their stuff. But with cell phones, people don't. They just feel like a license where they can just come around you and electromagnetically radiate you with their phone and ignore you with their phone. And somehow that's acceptable. And it's got to quit being acceptable. So I don't know what to say about it. I think I think Western society's toast. I really do. But it doesn't matter because I have my path and I stay on it. It doesn't matter win, lose, draw. I don't care. What I have to do is I have to stay on my good red road, I call it, of being a human being. And that's really, to me, the most important thing to have in front of us.
So in an hour and a half now, almost an hour and 40 minutes, a fascinating interview. You never once mentioned going to church.
I go to church. I go to church every day.
I don't. Well,
I mean,
yeah,
and let me rephrase that because, you know, we're both very spiritual people. Don't get us wrong that way. We're not like hippies or people that, whatever. We don't classify ourselves. But I go to church every time I step out here and I see something stunning. I look at everything around me. If I'm here, I'm looking out on the bayou, I'm watching the dolphins, I'm watching pelicans dive, or I'm at the beach watching this just amazing, like, you know, blue water. If I'm in the Ozarks, I'm looking at gorgeous oak trees and plants and animals. So, and in the Bible, and don't ask me where, my sister-in-law is an expert in the Bible. I mean, she could like tell you all kinds of quotes and things, and I'll say things to her and she'll say, oh yeah, that's Isaiah, blah, 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 you know? I mean, I respect all that, but that's not where I'm going. But I hear God best when I'm in a quiet place, in a beautiful place, because he made it, because God is creation. And when you respect that and you immerse yourself in that and you open yourself up to that, then you are one with God. And so that's our church. That's my church anyway. And I think in a lot of ways that's Dean's church. And I go to church with other people sometimes, like church, you know, but God is wherever you want him to be. And whenever you still your heart and your mind and you quiet and you listen, and that's when you'll hear him the best.
Yeah, that was being kind of facetious, asking you if you went to church, because I really knew you didn't.
Well, I mean, I do have people ask that, though. It's kind of funny.
Well, they ask it of me all the time. You know, I used to wear a collar. I used to be part of the establishment.
Wow.
And I've said for a long time now, because it's been many years since I left all of that they say, are you religious? Do you go to church? And I go, you know, no, I don't. I'm more trying to be spiritual. And I'm envious of the two of you that, and Jill especially, I so much appreciate the way you concluded this, that when you walk out the door, you feel like you're in church. And, you know, I worked for a number of years, 5 years, for the Hopi Indians in northern Arizona when I lived out there. And I learned so much from them, the kinds of things you're talking about. And on the Hopi reservation, they were the people that lived the traditional, and they called them traditional, way of life in the villages, the way they've lived for thousands of years. They were the others who have become westernized, Americanized, and they all worked for the Hopi government.
Right.
I was hired to work for the Hopi government to try to improve efficiency, effectiveness, customer service, blah, 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 blah. And I ended up, and it took 5 years, mostly 4.5 years, close to 5 years, to learn that I should not have been there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was the outcast. I was they call it the Behana. And the Behana, yeah. And but I think that was a big turning point for me in my life. That was many years after I left the church and the priesthood. But I think I began to learn from them the spirituality of the indigenous people around the world.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I felt so guilty at what I'd been doing that the last time I was there was a huge meeting. It was like, I don't know, maybe 70 or 80 people from that had become Americanized and the people from the villages. And we were trying to see if we could find some common ground. We couldn't. And I apologized to them with tears in my eyes. And I said, I have to leave you.
Good for you, man.
I mean, it was a very emotional time for me. But anyway, this has been a fascinating an hour and 44 minutes here
Oh
now.
my gosh.
Yeah, no, it's been fascinating. I will watch this again and again and again.
No.
I'll tell you, and I don't do that. I don't do that. I can't stand watching shows again because I mean,
Yeah.
I know.
it just gets.
Know
But
what you mean.
this has been really great. And Jill, I'm serious. I'd like you to think about it. I'd like to do some shows with you that you could be talking to me and educating me about your workshops, about gardening, about self-sustainability, about the kind of things that you've been doing and writing about. Because I'd like to share that with people, and I hope that it can draw more people to you and to your website.
Sure.
I think, as both of you have been saying, it's so important today. We're so disconnected from nature and from each other. We have been forced into this consumer society that well, Dean, I agree with you. It's not sustainable. I think something big is going to happen. And I think a lot of people are probably not going to survive.
I think so.
Well,
I think so too.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy your time in Florida. And I'm going to continue to pester you. You
Okay.
gotta come to Russia before your days of travel are over.
For sure. We
We'd
will.
love to.
I guarantee you we will.